the only talk radio show that takes you along with host and age explorer Rod Gontos on his continuing journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older. The Raad Life is brought to you this week by Your Home for a Lifetime, a company dedicated to empowering you to stay safely, independently, and comfortably in your own home. And now here is your host, Rad Gontos.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good. Today, we're a slightly different timetable today here. It threw me off. I thought, did I miss daylight savings or something here?
I got to keep you on your toes. It's the only way I can count on you to be alert. Otherwise, you just go into this sort of bro-ish, Irish, long, just chill, kick back. I don't know about you, but
I'm an old horse. I want to go the same path every day.
It might be, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not getting up to do a show at 8 o'clock in the morning. So first thing I want to just double check, are we running live on Facebook?
I'm typing it in right now.
Okay, all right. So for those who are listening to us on YouTube or listening to this later, come join us on OC Talk Radio's Facebook page as soon as you can. Paul will give us the indication when we're on, and then
we're on your Facebook page now. Here, let's see if we can get.
We're on my Facebook page. Okay, yeah. So the Rad Gantus, my personal page.
The Raad Life.
Oh, the Rad Life page. Okay, never mind. See, this is why we call it live radio, because we have no friggin' clue what's happening, and this is why I have to keep Paul on his toes. He keeps moving around.
That's
okay.
It.
Is it the Irish thing? You're just a moving target. It makes you a harder target. What is it exactly?
I'm drunk most of the time here.
Yeah, you're drunk. He said it. I didn't. But it seems appropriate because we are going to be talking about 12 steps today.
Yes.
So all right. One day at a time, Paul. One podcast at a time.
That's really one podcast at a time.
One podcast at a time.
That's the way I live my life.
Right. So for first, I just want to thank everybody who has been supportive for the last 6 years. I can't even believe we're still on the air after 6 years with that kind of gibberish going on.
Either.
But I really am excited about this show. I've been wanting to have Michelle on for a while, from the minute I met her, actually. And she hands me a book that says Badass Leader. And I'm like, okay, you need to be on the show. But shouldn't you read the book first? No, I'm sold from the cover. But then I did take a look at the book. And so, Michelle, welcome to the Rad Life.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here. Good to see you again.
You too. And Paul's been asking me, what is this? What is this? Am I bad? Is he bad? Is he badass? Whatever. He thinks he's badass.
I think I'm a badass.
He's got his days, But I want to just hand it over to you. Give people a little bit of background, but I do want to just preface it. We met, and I give a shout out to Eric Morley, who's also been a guest on the show from Blue Sea Agency in Orange County. He invited me to tag along for one of the California Love Drops that Wing Lam and him and a bunch of other people.
That doesn't sound too badass. A love drop. That doesn't sound.
Oh, it was totally badass.
It was totally badass.
Frontline workers. Wow.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Well, and let's just recap on that. I don't know. I think I talked about it with Eric, but I had him on the show before I was there. And so this is something that they came up with at the beginning of COVID last year, where there was basically food supplies that were going to go bad, and they try to figure out a way to, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'll just do a quick synopsis here, but to have find use for the food. And I think Winglam's let's just make burritos and deliver them to first responders. And it started that way, and then people jumped on board. And between Eric and Wing, and then Charles Antis, there's another shout out to my buddy Charles. There was no hope for the community. When those three came together, it was just, that was it. Badass, yeah, that was serious badass. And then they've been doing this for the last year, and I think I just saw something Eric posted where this thing is now going to proceed beyond COVID. And they've got Monsters a part of it, Yogurtland's a part of it. It's just an awesome organic thing that has happened here. Feel good. And so I met Michelle at the 200th Love Drop, which was at the Martin Luther King Hospital in Los Angeles. I thought I thought I was going to have to, wear Kevlar to go down there, and no, I just had to wrap myself in a lot of that love, and I met a badass. So it was a good day for me.
Yeah, me too. It was great. It's always very fulfilling. Lesson 10 is be a groupie, and we got to be groupies for frontline healthcare providers, and that's pretty awesome.
You know, there's something I saw today about surrounding yourself, and it's some of this stuff almost gets to the point where it's almost a cliche at this point. Like we hear it so much repetitively, whatever. But I saw something today which again emphasized this to me, and it's appropriate now. Is that yourselves by people that don't suck your energy, people that basically give you energy, right? And that was definitely the case that day. And for anybody who's interested, find out more about the California Love Drop. Just do a Google search, and if you can't find it, then I think I will probably have to teach you some Google search skills, but I will also give you the website as well. But definitely get involved. It's really cool. There's no reward, honestly, that is equivalent to the reward you get from volunteering or helping. Yeah. It's just no monetary amount of any will compensate. It's just a totally different satisfaction. So with that being said, nice meeting you at the Love Drop. Why don't you tell people what you told me about yourself at that time?
Yeah, so thanks so much, and thanks for having me on. A little backstory, just to kind of tell a little bit about my background. 3 decades of, frontline operational leadership and management and sales, and just, over 30, almost 35 years. I'm really dating myself now. And
you're in good company, Michelle.
Okay, good. And so working really hard, and then how it all kind of transpired was I decided to, as I started to approach my mid 40s, I started to think about, what if I only lived to be 49? Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is my mom passed away very suddenly, no symptoms, no warning signs, and just didn't wake up one morning at the age of 49. And turns out she had massive cardiovascular disease and no signs or symptoms. I mean, she was 5'8", 125 pounds, gorgeous. You'd never think that she was a walking, ticking time bomb. Wow. And so as I started to, get closer to approaching those years, I started thinking about, what if I only have 3 years left? And that really compelled me to live as if I were dying. And not in the morbid sense of being really down and depressed about it, but very intentional, and thought about, what is it that I want to accomplish in my life? And I better get busy, because what if I only have 3 years? So at that point, I was in a very comfortable role in real estate operations for a very upscale company, had a tremendous career all of my life. And I finally was at a level of regional VP. And so by all intents and purposes, I had arrived. Yeah, I was set. There was no reason for me to do something crazy. And but I decided to walk away from corporate America. And that was just before the Christmas holiday in 2011. I decided to pursue my dream of really focusing on the leader. And I really wanted to impact leaders, particularly bad leaders. And that
so why specifically that, Michelle? I mean, other than the fact that we always look at people that were in leadership positions that were maybe our peers or higher, we're like, now we could do this better, right? But I mean, what was it about this? Because again, you were set. You had paid your you had done your legwork, you had climbed the ranks, and you were at a position where you're now reaping the reward. And I always find it interesting how people, it's probably not as uncommon as people think, but where you reach that level and then you still feel a sense of non-complete satisfaction.
Yeah.
And that there's something, and then if you have an entrepreneurial spirit that has never really been out of the bottle, then at that point, it almost feels like you have enough skills and seasoning underneath your belt that you could take that risk. What was it for you on a personal level? Like, looking back, do you think there was something that was sort of a catalyst for what caused you to do that, other than, of course, your mom?
Yeah, so that was the catalyst as far as timing. But really, the bigger story underneath it all is outlined in lesson 1 of the book, From Bad to Badass Leader. It really focuses on the bad first. And so I felt compelled to redeem myself, if you will, because my cataclysmic wake-up call came in the form of a walkout. And I was oblivious. I was oblivious to how bad I sucked as a leader. I was at loss. And what's really scary is I was really a good performer on paper. So was my team. We were, breaking records. We were, from all intents and purposes, if you were just to look at the scorecard and the metrics that a lot of organizations, unfortunately, only focus on, then you would have thought that I was a rock star. My team were rock stars. But the reality was I was a terrible leader. And I wasn't one of those abusive. It wasn't that type of a leader. I was one of those, hover over people like a drone micromanagers, look for the needle in the haystack, the one little thing that wasn't right and have to point it out, couldn't leave it alone. I made all the decisions. I was a top-down, type of leader where everything had to go through me. So, a lot of insecurities, a lot of control issues. And so, but I was oblivious because just like leaders today, you can sustain that for a very short period of time, but it's not sustainable for the long haul. And so
and you probably also, it was a combination of nature and nurture, right? It was partly your own maybe DNA makeup, but also what you experienced along the way that basically gave you sort of an indication that, sure, this is the way it's done. And the only reason I mentioned that is because last week, I think it was, we had Etta on, who is the head of the chairman of the Democratic Party in Orange County, and she comes at it from union side. And then we had a couple of ladies before that, the week before that, were from a Gleam Foundation, which basically is setting up today to do training and leadership training specifically. And this is something that I might need to connect you guys together in the food and beverage industry, because what she was telling me is that when you arrive to a certain level, leadership training becomes part of your benefits package. Like you get that, but you have to get to that point to do that. Well, you just, what I'm talking about here with you is along the way, you pick up habits, you pick up indications from people, right? So if your leaders above you were basically doing things that were top down, very regimented, authoritarian, almost infrastructure, then you're going to pick that up as you go along. And it's going to be like, well, that's what I have to do. Right. Yeah. Whereas if earlier on in your life, in your career cycle, you are given opportunities to develop skill sets through guidance and mentorship, then you can break that pattern kind of, right? Yeah. Remind me, please remind me, it just occurred to me, I need to connect you with Gleam Foundation.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And so I would love to blame someone that was a boss of mine at the time, but really
it's just all your bad habits.
Yeah. So no, it's actually my childhood. So my father was an autocratic, top down, very punitive, and
very old school.
Very old school, very successful, moved up the ranks, actually quite significantly in his career. Fun little backstory. He was part of Playboy Clubs International. So he was the director of operations, Cornell grad. I mean, just highly decorated.
Yeah, man, that's all the street creds. I mean, in the hospitality industry, with entertainment, with the Cornell credentials behind you, going through the ranks. Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, so this was my upbringing. So I mimicked what I thought was being a good leader. And then the numbers were my evidence that it was working, right? Because I didn't understand how important people competencies were. I didn't have any people competencies.
So let me equally share a sort of a vulnerability position, right? Yeah. So I get that. I totally get it. Like where the primary relationship, that first primary relationship, and especially if you are sort of driven, or
very much.
I'm sure you didn't just turn into a badass overnight. I mean, I think there was a lot of bad maybe in bad. Yeah, so I think you're a badass from before, but you just didn't have it channeled. So I get that. My father similarly, civil engineer, overseas. I mean, I grew up on steel and concrete job sites, and he ran it like it, from a safety perspective and all this stuff, it was very regimented. There's a lot of control on issues. He didn't really bring that completely at home, but it wasn't not there. Like, it was part of who he was. It wasn't like you could turn off the switch and when he was home, he was somebody else. And I think that's very common for a lot of people of our peers and our generation, that they grew up in households like that, where their dad at work was their dad at home in one form or the other. So I mean, out of respect, you're like, well, this is what success looks like. This is what I'm supposed to do to be successful.
Yeah. And it's a slippery slope. And for me,
it is.
I was young. I was probably 25 going on 26. It's been a few years now. And I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have any people competencies. I hadn't been developed at that point, but I was promoted, right?
Hmm.
This happens today. It happens all the time where people get, the Peter principle, you get promoted to your level of
To the level of incompetence. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so I was incompetent when it came to understanding how to lead. I was a manager and a micromanager, but I was not capable of understanding my people. I wasn't really interested in understanding them. I was just really interested in driving results. And my
Mhm.
personality profile is extremely results oriented with enthusiasm, which comes off
Mhm.
intensity,
Mhm.
and then also very action oriented. And so that's stifling, and it can be suffocating, and it can make your teams feel like there's just nothing's good enough, right? And so
Coffee's for closers, Michelle.
yeah,
Coffee's for closers, right?
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
it's well, and in some industries are even more prone to that, like where it's a quota driven situation. I mean, if you're talking about was it real estate or insurance? I can't remember.
it was real estate operations.
Real estate. I mean, it's the same. I mean, you got quotas, you got closings. If you don't close, you don't eat, kind of thing. And so to be driven by outcome like that versus, for example, collaborative innovation or things of that nature, like that's really nice, but that's not doing anything for my balance sheet here. So so what happened? Like when you just basically said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to find another way, or what?
Well, what happened is when they walked out, and you mentioned unions earlier. So
Yeah.
the worst part was that the team that bailed they were unionized, right? So I'm in downtown Chicago in the early 90s, and
Right.
I'm young and oblivious. And then when they walk out and grievances get filed, and now you have union bosses that are mad at you, and they're not sending you replacement workers. And so I got a very fast education in how being a manager doesn't work, and I really needed to figure this leadership thing out. And so that was, I was fortunate that I had the opportunity to stay with the organization. I would have fired me, but they took responsibility, which was very noble of them, to say, hey, look, you're a great, hardworking person. We just need to give you some training. So they owned up to it, gave me an opportunity, and then I had to start bridge rebuilding. So here I am getting this great gift at 25, 26 of understanding what my mirror is, right? What's not working for me as a leader, and understanding the catastrophic impact that I had on teams. So I became very diligent in trying to self-develop. And this is the early 90s, right? So there wasn't a whole hell of a lot out there with respect to, it was still very top down.
I think I think the only thing there was the CD. I'm being facetious, but the CD series from Tony Robbins.
There was also Stephen Covey, right?
And Stephen Covey and the Stephen Covey, yeah, right.
So 7 Habits is what
Seven Habits, and then the CDs
Blanchard, I turned to Blanchard, and then that was my beginning of saying, okay, I really need to figure out a recipe for success. How do I get people excited about getting out of bed and coming to play their ass for me on my team? Like, how are they going to play really hard to deliver the best in customer service? Now, we were on the real estate operations side, which is very much like hospitality, where we had 24/7, 3 shifts, and we were literally providing all services 24/7 for residents that lived in the building. And these were high-end skyscrapers in downtown Chicago.
Yeah, with very demanding residents.
Density, high profile, high density. And then high touch when it comes to customer service. And so I really needed to figure out, because at the end of the day, right, it's my team that's providing those services. And so they're my first customer. I have to take care of my team. And so once I figured that recipe out, which I would love to say at 26, I got it all dialed in, read a few books, and boom, I was on my way. It didn't happen that way, because
easier to have an awareness of it than to actually put it into practice, as I find. Like you could know all the stuff, whether it's from books or from people or whatever, or mentorship programs or training, whatever, but to actually apply it where you have multiple dynamics involved, you have multiple environments involved, where you're dealing with all of those variables. It's a lot easier said in books than it is to implement.
Execute, yeah. Definitely.
Which is really where the rubber meets the road. I mean, you could learn all you want, but if you can't apply it, or if it's not applicable even to your industry, like there's also these nuances that have to be tweaked in order for it to be applicable, right? With the cultures that are already there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the perfect segue to why the Badass Leader brand, right? Because what I discovered is when I left corporate America in my mid 40s, and decided to launch a company focused on really helping leaders. I wanted to prevent what I call in my book bull rides. That's what I call my cataclysmic fall from grace, is my hashtag bull ride. So I wanted to prevent other leaders from having that same experience. So I focused on starting a company called MDR Coaching and Consulting Inc., where I could really focus on helping what I would call frontline, the Main Street leader.
Right.
And so that went really well. And I ended up working as a senior consultant for a very large global company as an independent contractor. And then throughout those trainings, I started recognizing in the classroom that there was a real hunger for leaders to learn how to lead, but there was also a void or a gap, if you will, that I identified that really inspired me to come up with the Badass Leader brand. And that gap was, I was hearing things like, yeah, this leadership thing, I know I need to improve my people skills, but it just doesn't feel like me. It feels like it's for the C-suite or the corporate folks, the white collar folks. And so I thought, I get that. And I really wanted to create a brand that would inspire the Main Street leaders. I mean, after all, they're the masses,
So it's a more approachable,
approachable, fun, edgy. I call it the gateway drug into leadership.
Okay, can I tell you something? Can I just share with you how brilliant that is? Because that is a conscientious positioning that you did, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's brilliant, and I don't know whether in his case it was a conscientious thing or it just basically evolved into it was a consequence of what he did. Before I did interior design, I actually hold a degree in economics, an undergrad in economics, and I have a master's degree in marketing from the Drucker Center, from the Peter Drucker Center in Claremont, which is no longer called the Peter Drucker Center. The gentleman has passed away since. But Peter Drucker, for those who remember 80s and 90s, was also actually, and still probably is referred to as the father of modern management. And Peter Drucker claimed to fame, because with all due respect to Peter Drucker, when he lectured, it was a snoozer. I mean, I would want a pillow and want to put my head down. He could tell me a bomb was falling on the auditorium and I would ask for an extra pillow, right? But his claim to fame, and to be fair, he was much advanced in years by the time, I went to school. But his claim to fame was that he wrote books on management that were not for the C level or the executive level. They were for the person coming up the ranks. And it was specifically in the case of management was the basic manufacturing, automobile industry, the big ones, right?
Those are my industries, yes.
Right. So what I'm telling you is, what I'm hearing from you is there was a conscientious effort to do something that was equally successful for Peter, because he literally, because of those books and because of the people that came through the ranks, through his guidance in the literature that he put out in language that they could understand, all those people, when they got to a higher point, they basically elevated him to say, thank you, because you were that mentor and guide along the way through your books. So I'm just running parallels here because I get exactly what you're saying. You are making it accessible to people.
And interesting and fun.
And interesting and fun. You're right. It's not something that, oh my God, I got 10 hours of this. I got to sit through that. Right. No, even more reason why I need to connect you with Gleam, honestly. I mean, but the look and the feel of the brand. Yeah. Okay. That didn't just come out of nowhere, right?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. So for two things. One is there's a story I don't want to completely reveal. I'll give you a little bit of it because it's in lesson 12 in the book. Okay, but there's definitely a passion that I have for, I'll use the motorcycle theme, for example. So I've become a rider, but before that I was a very happy passenger on the back of a motorcycle for years. And it was a passion that just was so freeing. And what I found on the back of a motorcycle that really inspired me was how the motorcycle community really looks out for one another. And how, it's kind of that motto of don't leave a motorcyclist on the side of the road. I mean, they just really, there is a sense of community no matter what you ride. Right. And I know that television and everything else may give them a bad rap because it's great for ratings. But the reality is you don't pass another motorcyclist, even if you're going the opposite way on the freeway at, 80 miles an hour without putting two fingers out or doing a wave, right? And so there's this wonderful sense of tribal, camaraderie and compadreship is the
Right,
is
whether you know
what I make it
each other
for.
personally or not, it's just a part and parcel
You're
of
part
that
of the
culture.
community that's
Yeah.
larger than just you, and it's
Right.
not about what book we're on, or sorry, what bike we're on, right?
Right.
And so that's part of the theme. And then there's another story in lesson 12 that of my
Which by the way, you're really pushing lesson 12, but there's another 11 lessons in this.
there
And this book,
are.
this book is available on Amazon, people. So look it up. Here it is.
Yeah, it's
I
a
don't know
fun
if
book.
we can say, here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so go get Michelle's book. It's really cool. And maybe if you're nice and you run into her, she'll give you a nice little autograph like she did on mine. But
Oh, you bet. It'd be my pleasure.
damn Zoom things aren't working on white paper. But
Yeah.
anyway, so look up, go to Amazon and get From Bad to Badass Leaders, and then Live to Lead at the bottom. Perfect. I mean, like
Live to
speaking
Lead.
to what you're just talking about.
Yes.
Is leveraging that language and that tribal kind of camaraderie.
Cool. It's also cool to be a badass leader.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody sits into, I've sat in some really significant C-suite meetings, and when somebody in the room says, wow, that's a badass idea, everybody smiles and snickers and loves it when they hear that. And so, I was very intentional about creating a contrast brand and really embracing the unconventionality of it, because I'm trying to reach an audience that is like me. It's like when I was 26, 25, and I was and this isn't just for 25 or 26 years old, six-year-olds. It's for anyone who is willing to step outside and explore a different approach to leadership. And more importantly, speaking to your listeners would be, many of them are probably business owners. Maybe they're in the service industry, manufacturing, industrial, automotive sales and repair.
Especially now with COVID and furloughs and encore careers, and you're thinking, what am I going to do next? Yeah.
Yeah, some of my big clients are manufacturing and industrial, and what's been really cool, I'll share one little anecdote. I did a boot camp last week, another Badass Leader boot camp for this company, and they were telling me that the participants were telling me, when they were first signed up for the boot camp, this leadership training, right? That they were like, oh my God, here we go again. Another leadership training. Yay. I'm so busy. I don't have time for this. How many times do I have to do this? So they're sharing this with me during the first break. And so they said, but then I came down the hallway and I turned the corner and I see your Badass Leader Live to Lead banner. And I go, wow, what is this? It invoked curiosity. Then they come into the rooms, they get their workbooks, their masks on, have rock open like a rock concert. And then we sit down and we get down to business and we start working through the 12 lessons. And the first break was about maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours in. And then they come up to the front and they're like, oh my God. Thank you. I'm so excited. I can't believe that we have this training and that we're learning this. It's real talk. It's straight. It feels like me. And, that's where I was just like, yes, that's exactly what I was. Oh no, did I lose you?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Cause you went away. Oh, Paul dropped off. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. That was like, yes, this is the audience that I want to reach. This is who I wrote the book for. And the cool thing is the lessons stack. And these are practical, day-to-day.
So let's take a minute and talk about the lessons just in general. Like I said, there's 12 of them. You touched a little bit on lesson 12, but just go work people through the lessons.
Talk Radio
synopsis.
Okay, sounds great. Did you want me to give a little synopsis?
Yeah, give a little synopsis on the lessons.
Okay.
And for
Rick
those
is
who
just
are,
a host here. He doesn't come into the studio. He does this
Paul,
remotely,
you're
so
on volume.
He's not here.
I don't think he can hear you. You might have to text.
I can't mute him. He's the one with the mute. So,
well, we'll see. We might get him on here.
Okay, so the reason why I want to just tell people, like, go to the website too, because you have sort of a synopsis of the steps, right?
I do.
So just walk people through the steps a little bit.
Yeah. So lesson 1 is, it sounds very intuitive. Don't be an ass. And that is, that's a common problem. A lot more than I would say managers, not leaders, are willing to admit. They're oblivious to the fact that their team perceives them as being an ass. And so there's a lot more into lesson 1, but that really starts with the introduction to my bull ride. And then each lesson, by the way, the book actually comes with a built-in workbook called Treasure Hunts. that are at the back of every single lesson where
Mhm.
you get to do some work on yourself, right? As you
Right.
go through the book. So it's actually a practical workbook as well as it is a read.
By the way, I love the fact that you also have rehashes.
Yes. Oh,
Like it
good.
was so it was so current, right? Like when I was trying to post about the show, about having you on as a guest, I'm like, how many friggin' hashtags does this woman have, like associated with her book, right? But then I looked at the book again, and it's like every chapter is these hashtags. We live in a world where, like, you know, say, you know, hashtag blessed, hashtag this, you know, hashtag badass. So it's really funny, but again, very current, very timely. The way that you wrote this thing, it's to your point. It's not just for the person who's maybe older or the person who is you know, in their 20s. It's for really anybody.
Good. Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
for sure. It
yeah,
came across that way very
my
much. So.
editor was like, no, you need to write a summary. And I said, no, I'm going to do it differently, you know, and that's the thing is I think it's really important that we're authentically ourselves and that we make decisions that feel right to us. And they're not going to be, my brand is not for everyone. You know, there are tons of amazing leadership resources out there. If my brand doesn't resonate with you, find one that does.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question because it's something that actually even came up last week. Okay,
Yes.
in conversation. All right, talking about things that have become almost cliches, right? If I hear one more person refer to themselves as a badass, really, right? I'm like, okay, can you define that a little bit? Like, it's become almost like a generic, right? Okay, so I'm really interested from your perspective, and I'll tell you why I'm really interested. Talking to you here even more. I don't I don't see somebody who's trying to wear the moniker of badass as literally like almost like an arm's length, like, you know, I break the rules, I do all of this stuff. What to you is a badass? And as far, by the way, as far as step one and not, don't be an ass, we could spend a whole friggin' show just on don't be an ass, right? So I might actually have you come back and just talk about how not being an ass. But what
How do
in
I
your what in your definition? How do you define badass?
Yeah. So I define badass as living through these 12 lessons. So it's someone who is aware of their self, meaning as a leader, I know what's working for me as well as what's not working for me. I understand my people and I prioritize people over performance because
Right.
at the end of the day, I get that the people are the ones who are getting me the performance, right? Outcomes or performance metrics that we get to enjoy because we're
Right.
badass leaders. Badass leaders also strive to live outside their comfort zone and inspire other leaders to do the same or other team members to do the same.
Case in point, your editor saying, or publisher saying, I want a summary. And you're like, no, I'm a badass. I'm going to be disruptive. I'm going to live outside the, yeah.
And it just has to resonate, you know, and it has to be authentic. It's the other thing about being a badass is don't be a kiss ass, be authentic, be yourself. And this brand is completely me. It's how I lead. It's how I, you know, engage both personally and professionally. And I'm okay with it not being for everyone. But the thing is that the people that I wanted it to be for, it's resonating and they're excited. And this brand is, you know, going places and we're making an impact. I had a letter from a reader that was so cool that I ended up posting it on my Facebook page and I think on my LinkedIn. I shared it about how this book has changed him and impacted his life. And he's in an industry where it's very top down. And it's, you know, he was obviously he shares that he's a product of his father and how it has impacted his team and that the metrics that they're enjoying as a result of him becoming self-aware.
Yeah. And that's what I found out about your book, Michelle, is for me, again, where I'm at, you know, I refer to it as seasoning, but you know, as we go through life, we pick up certain things and we start maybe if we spend time doing some internal work or what have you, both on a professional capacity and personal. And to be honest, I think it applies both ways. These skill sets that we pick up, that we take the time to basically develop the tools, but more so the sort of the awarenesses, I think apply in both our professional and personal lives, and actually make it even more possible to have more of a harmony and balance in both. So I found your book very interesting because again, it speaks to that primary relationships of parents and how it impacts, not in a sort of chastising way or, you know, all my problems are from my folks or, you know, like my upbringing, right? None of that. And I found that to be a refreshing voice because a lot of times it's a negative reference point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, acknowledging the awareness and the impact, and then taking that and then filtering in your own personal professional experiences, and then going off on a tangent because it still wasn't fulfilling, and you're still having that sense of want to improve and personal growth that filters through this. By the way, for those who are interested, the don't be a kiss ass is lesson 9. So lesson 1 is don't be an ass. And by the time you get to lesson 1 is don't be an ass. And by the time you get to lesson 9, you're still not done. Don't be a kiss ass.
Don't be a kiss
right.
ass. Yeah.
Right. So the path to badass has a lot of other.
Yes, a lot of layers. So I'll run through the lessons quickly so that your listeners can hear a little bit about again, they're fun, they're playful, but they are serious, and there's really great tools and resources, and so they go with it. So lesson 1, is don't be an ass. And lesson 2 is, now that you either know you are an ass or aren't an ass, stop, drop, take a selfie, because that's the first point where we really need to understand ourselves as leaders, and then what we need to do differently. And then lesson 3 is, let's talk about trust, baby. And that is because without trust, you can forget about being able to build a badass team. And then lesson 4 is put your people first. And that's prioritizing people over performance, because as I mentioned earlier, outcomes are things that we get to enjoy as leaders because we have been the leader that we get to be for our people in order to maximize those outcomes.
Well, and that includes taking a step back, letting other people have the spotlight. I mean, all of that stuff that goes into it. And to be honest, I've always said this, and maybe it's because of the hospitality connection, but I've always said that those are the ambassadors. I mean, those are the people that are your company's ambassadors. And it fascinates me how I've seen this happen at 5-star hotels wanting to be 7-star hotels. And in the course of trying to pursue a 7-star rating, which doesn't exist, they're basically looking at how to make everything on the front of house and all the stuff that's visually and all the uniforms, everything immaculate, right? Raising the bar and all of that stuff. But then when it comes to basically talking about the staff cafeteria and what other things could be done to benefit the things, it's like the last thing on the rung. And I'm like, you're in a hospitality industry. These are your ambassadors. You want to elevate yourself, and that's the last thing you're considering. There's a problem here in the infrastructure.
Yeah, they're their first customer. Your team is your first customer, right?
And I'll tell you, Michelle, I said something very recently. It happened at a cigar event here in South Orange County. I was talking to a guy who basically handles a lot of the leasing for Kroger's. When Kroger's is a massive company in the food industry, right? So we were talking about how because of COVID, they have now basically developed consciously, not just as a knee-jerk reaction, curb-sized programs, like where basically people will come and get stuff from the curb and whatever. And I said, what's interesting is I don't think they've connected the dots yet, that the person who's basically the point of contact with the car passenger or whatever, whoever's picking up, that is now their first ambassador point, right? Yes. And yet in the hierarchy of the organization, that person may be one step up or down from a bagger at the cash register. And yet to our point, if you don't understand that first point of contact now is this person, and you give them the leadership training or the customer service training, then that first impression is going to be derailed right at the curb.
Yeah, your brand experience. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And that's why it's really important. And again, where's the story that, the leader, say within, whether, I don't want to name Kroger, but let's just say any organization, how is it that person who's delivering the cart with the groceries to the person, how purposeful do they feel? How important do they recognize their work
in the sequence, or how important have they been made to feel in the sequence, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it's these, and again, this book, as you can tell by the cover, it's not touchy-feely. It's very sugar-free. It's filled with bumps and bruises. That's what these lessons are. This is what I did incorrectly. This is what I learned from it. And so the School of Hard Knocks is definitely spelled out through the lessons. And it also invites the reader to take a journey into their own mirror and really understand what may or may not be working for them, and then be able to tap into resources, be it our Badass Leader Academy and or workshops, boot camps, what have you. But more importantly, what I'm most inspired by since launching this brand, and of course, launching a brand in COVID was really fun, but has been those leaders, particularly in the agriculture, manufacturing, industrial, and service industries, that have really been attracted to this brand. I love it when a C-suite, like I had this president that contacted me and said, "Oh my God, this is going to be amazing for my people. This is exactly what they need." And that's really thinking about not what you think at the C-suite level you need. Go, buy a Stephen Covey, go through that program, phenomenal program, excellent. But what do your people need? And so that's been really exciting, is they've really embraced this brand for their teams, and their teams love it.
Well, and this book may be also kind of like an entry into that. Like if you're feeling a little bit intimidated by picking up a Stephen Covey, or that sort of almost like rock star experience of it, doing a fire walk with Tony Robbins or whatever, like that may be a little too much for you, especially in a society that has become more and more insulated. This would be really an interesting, your book is going to them, though the way that the language is written, the way that it's presented, it's going to them. It's not asking them to come to you, which again speaks to that leadership awareness that we're talking about. I want to touch on one chapter, which is lesson 7, and I want to do it in a slightly different way, maybe.
Okay.
And why this book, I think, is timely and important for people to basically delve into. It is an easy read. It is easy to comprehend. You're not trying to basically, build mazes and crossword puzzle clues for people in this. But
straight talk.
We're coming off a year of struggle.
Yes.
Right. So I understand, having owned my own business since 2003 and having sort of a burning entrepreneurial spirit in me that I didn't even realize was part of why I didn't really fit in corporate America forever, right? Until I got kicked to the curb and I found out why. So for some people, like, all they want to do is go back to a normal, whatever that may be for them, right? Now, you and I both know that's never going to happen again.
No.
We're not going back to that normal ever.
Right.
No, right. It's the next normal. It's not even a new normal. It's the next thing, right? But how do your chapter, lesson 7, says create the struggle.
Yes.
So for people that are saying, man, I've been struggling for a whole friggin' year. Like, what do you mean create the struggle, right? And I don't know if I'm going to be laid off or not. Now that basically things are coming back, people are realizing, oh, I don't need all that square footage. I don't need to house all my people. Maybe I can get, the old adage of I can get 2 people for the same price as 1. Now all of a sudden, I have to negotiate to stay on. Let's talk about the importance of creating the struggle. I totally get it from the title, but let's delve into that a little bit. And even though we are coming out of a struggle, why it's actually even more so important to do that now.
Yeah, so create the struggle. To be the greatest possibilities and potential are born from struggle. Outside the comfort zone is
whether we like it or not, that is the truth.
It really is. It really is. And particularly for me, and so again, and mindset is key, right? So, first the leader has to embrace the struggle and get themselves, the support that they need, be it peer-to-peer support or going to superiors or someone outside the organization to get the support that you need in order to sustain you so that you can be there for your teams. But creating the struggle in the way it's written in this book, and particularly coming out of COVID, is that's where growth and possibility lives. And that's where we grow as a team. That's where we bond as a team. It helps us reach our greatest possible potential. We tap into competencies and capacities that we never, ever imagined. And so struggle is an important part for organizations. Just think about it. It's almost like telling a business not to evolve. Right. So as leaders, we need to evolve, and we need to help our people grow and evolve so that we can be relevant, we can be sustainable, we can be positioned for scalability, and really remain, at the front of the pack, if you will. And
everything is constantly changing. So you don't have the luxury of maintaining your skill set, the way you operate, whatever, because everything, whether it's market conditions or whether competition or new innovation technologies, we are never going back to operating a business without a hybrid model. There's not going to be any kind of staffing that's the traditional staffing. The fascinating thing about the fact that people could not go to Starbucks. There's something as simple as that, right? People could not go to Starbucks as a alternative office environment.
We were
Right.
forced to innovate, and how cool is that?
Right. And I saw this in the hotel industry. I've seen it in other industries, the people, and I've said it when we were doing the COVID Chronicles and I was doing the show almost on a daily basis. You have an option of being either in a bunker mindset or a growth, bunker mentality or a growth mindset.
Yeah.
The struggle is your friend if you can also shape what that struggle is. It's your motivation, right?
It's your next greatest possibility. If
Right. And again, the old adage of, your opportunity exists outside your comfort zone. It's true. And it tends to be, earlier in life, it tends to be where we find ourselves in those situations put upon us maybe, or because of decisions we've done kind of like without really thinking it through. And all of a sudden here's the situation. But we look back and we go, well, that was actually an opportunity. It was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity. And so now we have the ability, and with the aid of something like your book, where we recognizing that that's the case, that it is actually a tool in our toolbox that we could use to motivate ourselves and others around us, then basically create the struggle.
Yes.
Like create the struggle, because that is a motivator.
With intention. So you're creating it on purpose. And here's the one caveat to that, which is it's important that we don't run to see. One of the challenges and why I wasn't asked as a boss is because I went in creating struggle day one, and that's a big mistake. So the reason why I mentioned the lessons stack is you need to have the foundation of lessons 1 through 6 before you can earn the privilege of creating the struggle.
But you were creating the struggle. You were creating the struggle because you thought that without struggle, people could not be motivated to do what you needed them to do. And in order to it was almost like a demanding thing. It's almost like being in the army and you're like, this is the way that I need you to do this. And I got to be hard nosed with this and so forth. What you in your book are talking about with creating the struggle, again, it's that with intention, it's a strategic decision. It's not a, I'm here and you're here kind of decision.
No.
Struggle. It's not a difficulty. You're not creating difficulty. You're creating possibility, and you're growing people outside of their comfort zones and outside of their job descriptions. Hang on, Paul's flagging us. Okay, he's flagging us. Well, he can flag us. I want to also commend you on one other thing, Michelle, and it's a very interesting dynamic that I think is going on, and I've seen it happen over the last 5 to 7 years, maybe, where in the course of tribe building, we have gotten into a habit of being a little bit non-inclusive.
Yes.
Whether it's basically, and I'm going to say it, whether it's basically gender-based, or whether it's like if I hear one more men group or women group, and or nonprofit coming together for impact. There's well intentions, but what I think it's interesting is in the course of forming tribes, we've also isolated a little bit in our own little circles, right? And what I found from your book actually was that you didn't fall into the trap of that in the course of doing tribes. You actually were very inclusive, whether it be, like I said, there was no mention on the gender side, but whether level, sophistication, where you were in your career path. Your book was encouraging of building of tribes, but it was more of a community versus a club mindset.
Yeah, it's definitely, my mindset is, and I was a late bloomer with tribal expansion. And so that was a big lesson and a missed opportunity for me, and something that I really want to implore the listeners to start expanding your tribe immediately, diversify. We can all learn from one another, and we're all
strength and diversity. I mean, honestly, strength and diversity. And like Paul and I talked about this the other day, with cancel culture, I hate that term because it's so purposefully used by one side or whatever. But like the fact that we are trying to basically rewrite certain things, like we don't need to rewrite them to the point where what was there is gone. We have to basically layer them with additional information. So it's the same thing with this. The diversity is a strength.
Yes, it
right?
is.
And we should embrace it in the course of applying the 12 steps, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been fun. Too fast.
Yeah, too fast. Absolutely. And like I said, I think I may I'm putting it out there as just a thought. You and I can talk about it later, but maybe Paul can stay on camera maybe for this, but maybe we have a whole episode on, don't be an ass.
Yeah, I mean,
Why do I get to stay on?
or any
I'm
of
the poster boy. I'm the
No,
poster
actually,
boy.
actually, you know what, Michelle? Here's what I like to do, and I'll talk to you about this off camera, right? I think, and I said this to you when we first met, and I don't come across a lot of people that have it structured like this, right? You have a book that has a system and a structure to it. It would be really interesting if we did actually do a series for you where it's, and I'm including Paul here, but like with OC Talk Radio and my production company, Golden Seal Productions, where we do a series of these kind of conversations, and maybe it's an open to like panel discussion or whatever, like a half and half kind of, where we take these things one step literally at a time.
Yeah.
Because I think it could make for an interesting package later for people. And to the tone of your book being basically written with accessibility in mind and current way of how people digest and so forth, this is how people digest these days.
Yeah, no, that would be super fun, and I would love to share, and I'd love collaborating and partnering with others, because it's always, everybody has a story, and every lesson resonates with someone that's reading it. They always come up and go, oh my God, this happened to me, or I did this. And so yes, I would think that would be fantastic. I'm game.
Yeah, we'll talk about it off the air, but you know, for those who are listening, yeah, you've been warned. we may be working on some badassery here. So, Paul, I appreciate you taking the time, man, for making this possible at 11 o'clock. I have another board meeting at 12 for Project Independence.
That's
so
now.
I couldn't do this, but I really wanted to sit down with Michelle and go through this. Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
All right,
I look
thanks.
forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'll give you a call later. Paul, thanks
Okay,
again.
sounds great. Ciao, Paul.
Thanks everybody for joining
You
us.
have been listening to the Raad Life radio show with your host and age explorer, Rad Gantos, brought to you on the one and only octalkradio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.